Today, we are talking about the importance of taking animation notes. Let's talk about it in this next episode. So before we get started, as usual, my name is Harvey Newman and I like to share my passion for animation here in this channel with all of you. If you do like this content, please consider subscribing, smashing the like button, because it really helps out for any other animator out there that is looking for quality content just like this. Now, if you actually want to know more about animation, and if you're just getting started and you're stuck in your animation skills, animation career for whatever reason, have a check on my website, harveynewman.com, because I do an animation workshop that is helping a lot of people out there. So have a peruse, have a check, and if you like it, consider joining me as a student, because I really like to help out people as much as I can, and these animation workshops are made to be one-on-one. Just me and you sitting down and actually me telling you what you can improve in your show reel, on your skills as you go forward as an animator. Now, without further ado, let's get started with this episode. Animation notes are incredibly important for any animator out there, and something that I've seen as of late, and I'm not too sure exactly what it is. A lot of animators don't take notes, upcoming animators I should say, and they just listen to the feedback and then they ingest it and then they go off and then they work on their animation. However, I feel like animation notes are incredibly precious, and you should treat them as such, especially if it comes from somebody that knows a lot about animation, somebody that is very experienced, somebody that is there to really kind of like hone in on your skills and making sure that you are the best animator possible. You should really listen in and take down those animation notes as best as possible, and also writing them down. Now, there's a few things that I like to do when taking animation notes, and I think I should share with you guys so you guys can hopefully take better animation notes and pay more attention to what's being said and how it's being said, because I think notes are very important for you to actually perform the best animation job as possible. And if you don't really take notes, you don't really understand what the person is trying to say fully, right? So let's start by giving you guys a few tips on how to take better animation notes. The first thing that you need to remember is that animation notes are very precious, as mentioned before, so therefore I believe that you should write them down. And the reason why you should write them down is because if you write anything down, doesn't matter what it is, you actually remember things better. There's something to be said about you actually kind of like listening to the information and actually keeping it in, and then hoping that you're going to remember. Human brains are weird in a way that normally our brains kind of like very selective. So if somebody tells you some information, not all the information is going to stay in, only the highlights of the information is going to stay in. And even when it stays in, the highlights, those highlights normally get superseded by something more important that has happened in your life, whatever it is. So that's the importance of actually kind of like making sure that you don't trust your brain to keep that information in. So this is why I believe that it's much better for you to write those notes down, and making sure that you actually go back to those notes as often as possible to make sure that you ingest the information as best as you possibly can. Now, when you write them down, there's something that happens with your brain and the hand, that as soon as you write them down, you remember them better. So all of a sudden, you're not really kind of remembering just the highlights, you're remembering everything that was said to you in the most clearest way possible. So make sure you write down your notes, and don't just listen to somebody, write them down so you can remember everything the person said and you can make as good of a job as possible. Now, the second thing that you have to do after writing down your notes and after getting all the information from the person that is giving you the notes is ask questions. So go through your notes one by one and then start asking questions, because some of the stuff is going to be semi-blurry, right? So don't be afraid to ask the questions and just go like, what do you mean by this, or what do you mean by that, if you have those questions. And if you don't have the questions, then perhaps you need clarification in certain things, right? Like, do you mean this on this bit here? Do you mean this other thing? Is that what you mean? And by saying yes, the other person, to you, means that you got the information correctly. So don't be afraid to ask questions, especially when somebody is giving you feedback, because that's the perfect time for you to ask as many questions as possible. Because what's going to happen is that once you ask those questions based on your notes, sometimes you're going to have some notes that you wrote down that were wrong, or maybe you understood them incorrectly, or maybe it was kind of like not really 100% what you thought it was. So then you can start adding notes to your notes to make sure that you get the information as accurate as possible, so you can actually work on your animations and make them shine. Now, point 3 is when you go back to your desk with your notes, with the clarification, feeling good about the fact that you're going to do some kick-ass animation, sit down with those notes and try to break them down in chunks. See, all the notes are not going to come to you as in organized, right? They're not going to come to you organized. They're going to come to you in different ways, because if like the people giving you notes or reviews are anything like me, they will pick on like big things that you have to address, and then also tiny things, details that you have to address. Those things will come in different times in your timeline of your animation. So watch out for the knees here. Oh, watch out for the pose on this one. So there's big things and small things. So go through your notes and break them down so you know how to actually tackle them. So go first for the big stuff on your notes. So you'll be like, okay, this is first, this is second, this is third, based on the notes. Turns out there was some knee popping or some elbow popping here and there. That's small, and put it on the bottom if you can address it. Because what you will do this way is basically, because what will happen if you do it this way is that you will tackle the big guns, the big stuff that was wrong with your animation first, and your animation was going to be much more fleshed out that way. And then the small details are going to just complement the animation. And things like knee popping or elbow popping or like a shoulder kind of like mangled or anything like that is things that you definitely need to address, but perhaps not as important as changing the whole pose of an animation, right? So make sure you do that, sit down on your desk, take some time, go through your notes, break them down in a way that they're organized to you before you tackle the animation. Now, when you're working on the shot, when you're working on the notes, make sure that you reassess your notes every day. The person giving you the notes most likely told you how long you have to make these changes. So 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, doesn't matter what it is. So you know that you have a certain amount of time, and within this certain amount of time, you have to address those notes. So every day, reassess those notes to make sure that you're doing it correctly, because sometimes, it has happened to me many times, you think that the one way that you've done it, or that you're going to do it, is going to be the way. So you have your notes, you kind of start working, and by the 3rd or 4th day, just before you have to actually kind of deliver the work, you look back at your notes and you realize, oh snap, I forgot about this and this other thing, right? So you having fresh eye on your notes every day, first thing in the morning, is really important, because sometimes your brain kind of scrambles things a little bit. Having reassurance every day that you are actually doing the job in the correct way, in the correct manner, it's great. Also, because you have your notes written down, ticking things off as you go through is going to feel incredibly satisfying to you. Now, throughout the process, let's say you have a week or 2 weeks. That's a long period of time for animators. If you have that amount of time to actually assess your notes, or to actually do your tweaks, make sure that sometime in between that week or 2 weeks, make sure that you actually ask more questions of your director, lead, the person that gave you notes. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to write down your notes and go through all the process that we just talked about. And when you sit down on your computer and you start animating 2 or 3 days in, guaranteed you're going to have some questions about some decisions that the director or the lead had. And sometimes those decisions are not really set in stone, at least not with me, because some decisions that you take are like, for sure, this needs to change. And some of the decisions is like, I think this will work, try it out and let me know if this works. So if you have one of those directors that kind of like gives you a little bit of flex to actually try different things, then a few days later, try those things first. Make sure you actually get used to the feedback and the shots that you have to do. Once you are comfortable with it, go back to your director, go back to your lead and be like, this is what I have. Do you mind having a look quickly? Just to know I'm going the right way. Just as a reassurance that you're doing it right. Sometimes you don't have that. Sometimes they'll just tell you, you have a week to do it. Don't bother me again. Go and do your job. Come back to me when it's finished. But sometimes you do have people that go like, you can ask me anytime, anything. Come to me if you have any questions. And then Bob's your uncle. So if you have one of those, just make sure that don't go to them all the time, but just like take a few days, digest information, work on your stuff, and then only when you really have a bunch of questions that need to be clarified, go to the person and be like, this is my questions, these are my clarifications that I need, can you please help me out? And then I'm pretty sure the person will come along and will help you out as best as they can. So this last point that I have depends on what studio you're working on, because some studios are very much like almost like a production line, that you have a certain amount of time, you need to do your shots and you get your notes, and as soon as you get your notes you have to address them and don't ask questions, just come back to me when it's done. But some places have a much more flexible pipeline where the lead, the supervisor, the director is much more flexible to kind of like see progress as you go through. Now, if you have one of those directors, make sure that whenever you actually are ready to present the final work, that you go above and beyond their expectations. Because what happens is that in this industry, because there's so much competitiveness, there's so many talented animators out there, if you just give the director, supervisor, lead, whatever they ask exactly, and not more, not less, depending on the studio that you are, once again, they will be satisfied, but they're not going to be amazed. You want them to be amazed. If the studio that you are right now actually asks you for a certain amount of things and that's what you need to deliver, and that's what is going to make the shot amazing, then do that and that's it. So you have to be flexible. But if you have a little bit of give and the director kind of goes like, well, just go with the flow and surprise me. So you do address those notes that the director gives, but then go above and beyond a little bit, not too much, because you don't want to actually make sure that the shot is completely different from what is asked. But make sure that you actually make that shot shine in the best way you can, to make sure that the director looks at it and sees that you actually added your own personality, you infused your own thing into that shot. That you're just not a machine that is there to make animation exactly as the director wanted, that you actually are much better than this and you actually have your own saying on the animation itself. So this is kind of like a gray zone once again, because like there is studios out there that you just are told to basically deliver to the director exactly what they mean, but there's a lot of studios out there that give you a lot of freedom for you to actually kind of flex your animation muscle a little bit. And when you do, then you have so much more fulfillment, because when you look at that shot on the screen and you see that it's yours, and it's yours because you decided these things on top of what the director asked you to do, it's going to feel much more beneficial, you're going to feel much more proud of the shot, and you're going to feel fulfilled as an animator. Now, final thoughts. I didn't used to take notes in the beginning, believe it or not. I was genuinely the kind of animator that used to be like, I can listen to it and then I can just like think it and it will happen because my mind is strong and I won't forget anything. Maybe it was not that bad, but you know what I mean. Like it was genuinely like it was naive for me to think that my brain would actually carry on all that information that was given to me, especially when you have a ton of notes. So make sure you write them down, because there's nothing better. Like even nowadays, even though I'm not animating, everything my boss, Leslie Benzies, tells me that we need to address or we need to do or whatever it is, everything I write down, because what happens is sometimes we have a meeting on a Friday and then the weekend goes past, and then Monday I have to actually kind of like think about everything that he actually told me and the things that we need to do. If I write them down, I have my notes, and if I have my notes, it means that I can know exactly what he said, how he said it, and how we actually should structure things, what's important, what's not, and break those notes down, as I told you guys, to make sure that what's important gets tackled first, and then there's some secondary things that we need to do later. So I do that, it became a habit, and if I don't write things down, it feels odd, I feel like I'm gonna forget them. That's kind of how paranoid I am now about taking notes. But it's a good habit, I have to say, because sometimes a few days go by and I kind of feel like something was said that I think I forgot what was said about this in this meeting. You kind of go back a few pages and you go like, oh, all right, okay, I forgot about this stuff, let me do it now. And so it's basically like a diary that you just have the information there, you can go back to it at any point, you can read through it, and then you can just like process the information as best as you can. Thank you very, very much to all my supporters in Patreon, all the people that have been supporting me with every month. I have 5 supporters so far, which I'm incredibly thankful. You can actually read their names right here next to me. And thanks very much to every single one of them. If you like to support my work that I'm doing here on YouTube, and you would like to see much more behind the scenes and like things that I do, like just before this video I was shooting like a behind the scenes for this video. So if you like to see that, then consider supporting me on Patreon, because there's many more things going on over there, and I'm gonna try and make sure that like whatever happens there is completely different than what happens here on YouTube. This is always gonna be free, so if you don't want to support me over there, then definitely please subscribe, please hit the like button. But if you actually would like to go an extra mile, then go to Patreon, support me there, because it's highly appreciated. And that's all I had for you guys for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, stay well, stay safe. Peace.